My husband's sister called me dependent at every family dinner and told people it was sad. I let a man pay for everything. My husband shut her up with one sentence. I was working as a receptionist at a physical therapy clinic when I got pregnant with my first baby. My husband Nick and I ran the numbers and decided together that I would stay home after the baby came. He made good money as an electrician, and daycare would have eaten almost everything I brought in. It was a decision we made as a team. I kept our house clean. I cooked every meal. I handled every appointment, every bill, every grocery run while Nick was at work 10 hours a day. He never complained. He told me all the time that what I did was harder than his job because at least he got to clock out. Things were great until his sister Donna got involved. Donna was 3 years older than Nick and had gone through a divorce about a year before I had the baby. Her husband left her and she took him to court for alimony and got it. She was getting paid every month by a man she was no longer married to. I never said a word about it because it was none of my business. But Donna had a lot to say about me. The first time was at Nick's parents' house for Sunday lunch. I was feeding the baby in the living room and Donna sat across from me and asked when I was going back to work. I told her I wasn't planning on it right now. She looked at Nick's mom and said, "Must be nice." I let it go. The second time was at a birthday party for Nick's dad. Donna asked me what I did all day, and before I could answer, she told the table that she could never just sit around and let a man pay for everything. Nick was outside with his dad. After that, it became her favorite topic. Every single family event. At Easter, she asked me in front of everyone if I even had my own bank account. At Nick's cousin's wedding, she told a table full of strangers that her brother's wife didn't work, and she thought it was sad that women still chose to be dependent on men in this day and age. She said it while I was sitting right there. At a barbecue, she asked me what I'd do if Nick left me tomorrow. She told me I'd have nothing because I had no skills and no income and no way to take care of myself. She said she was just looking out for me. She wasn't. She was looking down at me and she wanted everyone else to see me the way she did. I'd sit at those tables with a baby on my hip or a plate in my hand, and I'd feel the eyes start to slide off me the way eyes do when someone has just said something embarrassing about you. People wouldn't look at me directly after Donna said one of her things. They'd look at their plates. They'd look at the wall. They'd look at each other. And I'd sit there feeling smaller and smaller and try to act like I wasn't keeping count of every single comment, but I was. The worst part was she only went hard when Nick wasn't standing next to me. She'd wait until he stepped outside or got caught in a conversation across the room. By the time Nick heard about it from me or his mom, it always sounded smaller than it was. His mom would say Donna didn't mean it like that. Nick believed me, but he never caught it live, so all he could do was call her and tell her to knock it off. She'd tell him he was being sensitive. This went on for almost 2 years. Then Christmas came. We were all at Nick's parents' house and the kitchen was packed. His mom and dad, his aunt and uncle, a few cousins. Donna was there with her new boyfriend Mason, who she'd been seeing about 4 months. I was cutting pie at the counter when Donna looked at me and said she just thought it was wild that some women were perfectly okay with contributing nothing financially to their household. She said it loud enough for the whole kitchen to hear. Then she said she could never respect herself if she couldn't stand on her own 2 feet. She looked right at me. Before I could open my mouth, Nick walked in from the hallway. He'd heard every word. He put his plate down on the counter and looked at his sister and said, "You get $2,200 a month from a man you're not even married to anymore, and you're standing here calling my wife dependent." He said it the way you'd read the time off a clock. Every person in that room heard him. Donna's face dropped. Mason put down his drink and asked her if that was true. She let out a forced laugh and said, "It's not like that. The court ordered it. Ryuji owed me that money. I gave him 8 years of my life." Mason didn't laugh. He said, "So you've been getting paid by your ex this whole time, and you never told me." She said it never came up. 4 months of dating and it just never came up. The kitchen went so quiet I could hear the clock above the stove. Then Donna spun around and pointed her finger right at me and said, "You told him to say that. You've been waiting to embarrass me." Her hand was shaking. For half a second I almost did what I always did. I almost swallowed it. But Nick was right behind me, and every person in that room was watching, and I was done being quiet. I looked at her and said I didn't say a word. "Nick heard you on his own." My voice came out steady. Nick stepped up next to me and said, "Nobody told me to say anything. I've been listening to my wife come home upset after every single family dinner for 2 years because of you." Yelena, his mom, moved between us and said, "This is Christmas. Can we please just eat?" She told Nick he didn't need to bring up Donna's personal business. Nick's jaw tightened. He looked at his mother and said, "So Donna gets to bring up my wife's personal business at every dinner for 2 years, and nobody says a word, but I say one thing, and now it's a problem." Yelena didn't answer. Cullen, his dad, was at the end of the counter and didn't look up from his plate. He'd decided long ago this wasn't something he was getting in the middle of. Yelena started covering dishes with foil because she needed something to do with her hands. Mason grabbed his jacket and said he was going outside for air. The screen door bumped shut behind him. Donna leaned against the counter and stared at the floor. Nick reached down and squeezed my hand under the counter where nobody could see, and I squeezed back. For a few minutes, the room got a little quieter. One of the cousins drifted toward the living room. Yelena kept putting food away. I let myself feel a little wave of something like relief, like maybe Donna was standing there finally hearing herself. Maybe the worst part was over and we'd get through the rest of the night without anything else blowing up. I was wrong. About 10 minutes later, Donna came back into the kitchen with red eyes and smudged mascara. She'd been crying somewhere working herself up. She looked right at me and said, "You think you won something. You're still nothing without my brother. At least I earned my money in court. You just spread your legs and got a free ride." The whole room stopped. Nick's aunt dropped a serving spoon on the counter with a clang. Yelena brought her hand to her mouth. Nick stepped forward, every muscle in his arm tight, and I put my hand on his arm and held it there. He'd done his part. This one was mine. Donna had said the worst thing anyone had ever said to me. In a room full of people I was supposed to call family, 10 feet from where my baby was sleeping in a car seat in the next room. My hands were shaking, but not because I was scared. They were shaking because I had 2 years of words sitting right behind my teeth. Every time before, I had stayed quiet because I didn't want to cause drama at someone else's table. Every time, Donna walked away thinking she was right. Not tonight. I had something to say, and I was going to say it in front of every person who ever watched her come at me and did nothing. I stepped around the counter and walked past Yelena and the cousin in the doorway and stopped close enough to Donna that she had to look at me. I didn't raise my voice. I said I wake up at 5:30 every morning. I feed Lloyd. I clean. I cook. I handle every bill, every appointment, every errand. Nick Nick works 10 hours and comes home to a house that runs. That's a full-time job I don't get paid for, and I chose it because it's what's best for my family. Donna blinked. She was trying to find an angle. I didn't give her the chance. I said, you've been calling me dependent for 2 years. I've never once asked for money I didn't earn through work I do every single day. You're collecting $2,200 a month from a man who left you, and you have the nerve to call me a freeloader. She started to cut in. I held up my hand and said, no, you've had 2 years of talking, it's my turn. And she closed her mouth. I kept going. I said I turned down a job offer 8 months ago. A clinic called and offered me a position with better pay than I was making before. I said no, because Nick and I decided together that Lloyd needed me at home. I chose this. I wasn't stuck. I wasn't trapped. I chose my family. Nick shifted behind me. He didn't know about that call. I'd never told him because at the time it didn't feel like a big deal. The clinic had reached out, offered me a good spot, and I thought about it for maybe a day before I turned it down. Nick and I had already made our decision, and I was happy with it, and I didn't need to wave it around to prove anything. But standing in that kitchen on Christmas with Donna calling me nothing, it mattered. It mattered because it proved something she'd been wrong about from the very start. I wasn't trapped. I wasn't too lazy to work. I had a real option in front of me, and I said no thank you because my family came first. Donna's eyes moved around the room looking for a life raft. Yelena was staring at the floor with her arms crossed. There was no, she didn't mean it like that coming this time. Then Cullen finally stopped eating. He set his fork down and looked at his daughter and shook his head slowly. He said, you went too far, Donna. 4 words. The way her face fell told me everything. Cullen never took sides. Cullen was the one she could always count on to stay in his chair and let things play out, and he just told her she went too far in front of everyone. She looked like someone who just found out the ground she was standing on wasn't solid. The back door opened. Mason walked back in. The look on his face told me he'd been on the porch the whole time. He looked at Donna and said, I asked you 3 times if you worked, and you told me you were between jobs. You never mentioned alimony. His voice was calm, but there was nothing warm in it. Donna said, that's different. Mason tilted his head and said, how? She just stood there. She didn't have a spin for this one. Mason walked over to the chair where his jacket was hanging, put it on, and said, I think I'm going to head out. Merry Christmas, everyone. He walked through the kitchen and through the living room, and the front door closed behind him. Not a slam, just a regular close. Donna stood watching the space where he'd been. The kitchen was completely silent. Every person in that room was looking at her or at the floor. She'd walked in tonight with a boyfriend on her arm and her usual confidence and her favorite hobby of making me feel like nothing. Now her boyfriend was gone. Her dad had told her she went too far. Her mom wouldn't look at her. Her brother was standing behind me like a wall. She was the smallest person in that room. I turned to Yelena. I wasn't angry. I was just tired. I said every time Donna said something to me, I told you. And every time you said she didn't mean it like that. But she did mean it. She meant every word. And you let it happen in your house. Yelena's eyes filled up and she said, I just didn't want fighting at family dinners. I said there was already fighting. You just didn't count it because I was the only one getting hurt. Her face broke and she pressed her hands against her cheeks and started to cry. She said, I'm sorry. I should have said something. I nodded. I didn't rush to tell her it was okay because it wasn't okay. I said, I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm asking you to stop pretending there are no sides when someone is being cruel to me at your table. She nodded with her eyes closed. Cullen stood up and walked over to Yelena and put his hand on her shoulder. Then he looked at me and said, she's right. We should have handled this a long time ago. In 2 years, Cullen had never said anything that direct to me about anything that mattered. He was the kind of man who showed love by grilling burgers and fixing things around the house and staying out of conversations that got too loud. So hearing him say that, hearing him not just agree with me but say it out loud where everyone could hear, hit me in a place I wasn't ready for. My throat got tight and I had to look at the ceiling for a second so I wouldn't start crying too. Donna wiped her face and let out a shaky breath and said, so everyone's just going to gang up on me. I'm the bad guy because I had an opinion. Nick didn't wait. He said, you didn't have an opinion. You had a campaign. You went after my wife every chance you got when you thought I wasn't listening. That's not having an opinion. That's being cruel on purpose. The word campaign hung in the air and Donna flinched because she knew he was right. Her chin shook and she said I was trying to help her. Nick said no you weren't. You were trying to make yourself feel better about your own life by tearing down hers. It worked for a while, but it's over now. Donna opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She closed it, opened it again, closed it. For the first time in 2 years she had nothing to say. She turned without a word and walked into the living room and picked up her purse. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't throw one last comment over her shoulder. She just walked to the front door and pulled it shut behind her with a soft click. That soft click was louder than any door slam I've ever heard. It was the sound of someone leaving a room knowing they lost and not having the energy to pretend otherwise. The kitchen was still. Then Nick's aunt turned on the faucet and started washing dishes. She didn't say anything about what just happened. She just started washing like she was giving the rest of us permission to breathe again. One of the cousins turned the music back on, low, just enough to fill the silence with something that wasn't tension. 2 weeks later, Yelena called and said Donna wanted to come to Sunday lunch. She said Donna wanted to make things right. I asked if Donna had said she wanted to apologize to me. Yelena went quiet, then said she wants to move forward. Move forward. Not, I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just move forward. I told Nick about the call and he said if you don't want to go, we don't go. If she starts again, we leave. Either way, I'm with you. I decided to go because I needed to know if anything had actually changed. Sunday came and we drove over with Lloyd in the back seat chewing on a teething ring. Donna was already there in the kitchen helping Yelena set the table. She gave me a small nod when I came in. Not a smile, just a nod. I nodded back. Lunch started fine. Donna was quiet. She wasn't the Donna I was used to. She complimented Yelena's roast. She asked Cullen about something he was fixing in the garage and actually listened to his answer. When Lloyd started fussing, she asked if she could hold him and I said sure. She bounced him gently and didn't say a single sharp thing. She didn't ask me when I was going back to work. Halfway through lunch, her phone buzzed. She glanced down, read it, put the phone face down, and excused herself to the bathroom. When she came back, her eyes were red. She picked up her fork but didn't eat. Yelena asked if she was okay. Donna said Mason broke up with me for real. He texted me. The table went quiet. Then Donna looked right at me and said, I hope you're happy. She said it low and tired, but the accusation was clear. I felt Nick shift next to me, and I put my hand on his leg under the table and spoke first. I said, I I didn't make Mason leave. He left because you lied to him. The same way you've been lying to yourself about why you go after me. I said, I'm sorry he left. That hurts and I know it. But that's not my fault and you know it. Donna stared at me. She didn't fire back. She pushed her chair back and got her purse from the couch. I thought she'd walk out without a word. But at the door she stopped and turned around and looked at me from across the room and said, I know. 2 words. She didn't explain. She didn't dress it up. She just said I know and walked out. 2 words. Somehow those 2 words carried more weight than anything Donna had ever said to me. More than every comment about me not working. More than the thing she said at Christmas about me getting a free ride. Because those 2 words meant she heard me. She heard me and she knew I was right. And she couldn't say it any bigger than that yet, but she said it. I sat at that table after the door closed and I didn't feel victory. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt sad. Not for myself, for her. Because Donna had just lost another person. And somewhere underneath all the pride and the deflection, she knew exactly why. 2 weeks went by and I didn't hear from her. Then one night I was folding Lloyd's clothes when my phone buzzed. It was Donna. I stared at the screen for 3 full rings before I answered. Her voice sounded flat and tired. She said, I'm not calling because anyone told me to. Then there was a long silence. Finally, she said, Ryuji left me because I made him feel like nothing he did was ever enough. I picked at him the same way I picked at you. Every little thing. Every dinner. Every time he tried. When he left, I told myself he was the problem. I told myself I was the strong one, but I wasn't strong. I was angry. And I needed someone to put below me so I could feel like I was above something. Her voice broke. She said you were easy to go after because you had everything I wanted. A husband who stayed, a baby, a house that felt like a home, and you looked happy. I hated that you looked happy. I sat on the edge of my bed with the phone pressed to my ear. She wasn't done. She said that thing I said at Christmas, about the free ride. That was the worst thing I've ever said to anyone. I've been replaying it every night since. I don't even believe it. I said it because I was cornered and I wanted to hurt you the way I was hurting. I said quietly, it did hurt. And I meant it for every time. Easter, the wedding, the barbecue, every time I drove home from a family dinner with a knot in my chest. She said, I know, and I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry where I want you to say it's fine. I know it's not fine. Then her voice dropped lower, and she said I stopped working 8 months after the divorce. Not because I couldn't find a job, because I was depressed and I couldn't get out of bed most days. The alimony was the only thing keeping me afloat. Every time I called you dependent, I was describing myself. I asked why she didn't tell anyone. She laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. She said because I'm Donna. I'm the one who has opinions. I'm the tough one. I couldn't be the one who fell apart. And right there, in that one sentence, I understood Donna in a way I never had before. She'd built this whole version of herself after the divorce. The strong one, the independent one, the one who didn't need anyone and had something to say about everyone. And she'd built it on top of something that was crumbling the whole time. She couldn't let anyone see the cracks, because if the cracks showed, then the whole thing came down. So she kept building. She kept talking. She kept going after me, because every time she pointed out what she thought was wrong with my life, nobody was looking at what was wrong with hers. I sat there and felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness. What she did over 2 years left marks. I wasn't going to wrap this up with a bow, but I could give her something honest. I said, thank you for calling. Thank you for being honest. That took a lot. She said, I'm going to do better. I don't know if you believe that, but I'm going to try. I said, then show me. Not at one dinner, not in one phone call. Show me over time and I'll believe it. She said, okay, just okay. We stayed on the phone for a few seconds without talking. Then she said, your son is really cute, by the way. He looks just like Nick. I smiled before I could think about it. Such a regular, human aunt thing to say. I said he acts like him too. She let out a small breath that might have been a laugh. Then the call was over. I heard the shower shut off down the hall. A minute later, Nick came around the corner with a towel around his waist and his hair still wet. He said who was on the phone. I said your sister. His eyebrows went up. I shook my head and said I think she's going to be okay. I think we all are. He sat down next to me on the bed and the mattress dipped under his weight and he put his arm around my shoulders and pulled me in. I leaned my head against his chest and could smell the soap on his skin and feel the warmth coming off him from the shower. For the first time in 2 years, when I thought about the next family dinner, I didn't feel that twist in my stomach. Maybe Donna and I would never be close. Maybe the best we'd ever get was polite and careful and a little bit kind, but that was more than what we had before, and it was enough for now.